Hello, everyone. Happy National Poetry Month. We got today's Thursday when I'm recording this, and I'm going to upload it tonight. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? I don't think that's right. I think we only have 3 more days of this month actually left. The 30th is, let me check. I got my handy dandy notebook. Let me see. I don't know the date anymore, y'all. Continue. Let me just see the month. Get out of here. No, we only have 2 more days of this month. So, only 2 more days of Poetry Month. So, here we are, y'all. We're in the final stretch. Hope you all have been enjoying my poetry. I have been sharing all month on my TikTok, my Instagram, my Facebook. If you follow me on Facebook, I don't want to give it out. But if you want to follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, my name will be down below. It's the same name for all of them. I'm Calicious. Please follow me. So yeah. So this week, I forgot that April was a 5-week month. So we're gonna read. This is the final book. I've already read this. It's called Read on Reread by Jehanne Dubrow. I hope I have said her name right. So this one has 4 sections. But first, let's talk about Jehanne Dubrow as a person. So she is the author of 9 poetry books, including the most recent called Wild Kingdom, released in 2021. I have not read it. I'm on her site, so she does not have a Wikipedia. So I'm using her site. A book of creative nonfiction, Through Smoke, an essay and notes, which was released in 2019. Her second book of nonfiction, Taste, a Book of Small Bites, will be published by Columbia University Press in 2022, which is this year. So she's still very active. Her previous poetry collections are Simple Machines, American Samizdat, Dad. I can't say it, y'all. It's Samizdat. Samizad. We're gonna go with that. Dots and Dashes, The Arranged Marriage, Red Army Red, Stateside, From the Fever World, The Hardship Post, and a chapbook called The Promised Bride. She also co-edited 2 anthologies, The Book of Sense, 100 Contemporary Poems about Poetry, and Still Life with Poem, Contemporary Nature, Motes in Verse. So I have the 100 Contemporary Poems about Poetry, The Book of Scented Things. I was going to read it, but then I was like, I'm going to revisit this one. So I will read that one eventually. But I really enjoyed this book when I read it. Let's talk about some more about her. So she is appeared in a lot of magazines, including Poetry Magazine, Poetry Northwest, Plowshares, Prairie Schooner. It's a long list. She what else has she done? She's the founding editor and National Literary Journal of the last day. Say that 5 times fast. She is the founding editor of the National Literary Journal Cherry Tree. All right. She earned a BA in Great Books from St. John's College, an MFA in Poetry from the University of Maryland. Hey. And MFA in Creative Nonfiction in the Vermont College of Fine Arts, and a PhD in English from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. So, she, I know she was an Army wife, so I think she moved around a lot. That's probably why there were like so many. Now, I thought I had her book, which was called Stateside, which she talks about her husband being away and stuff. But maybe I did not enjoy it because I can't find it. So I might have given it away. But maybe I'll rent it from the library or something, see if I can find it and see if I remember why I don't have it. Unless I just haven't looked hard enough. I might not have looked hard enough, but yeah. I feel like I did enjoy this book more, the Stateside, but I think I read both for college in my undergraduate, which is where I originally read this book from one of my poetry classes. So, it says some of her writing talks about Shoah, American Jewish identity, intergenerational trauma, and the ethics of representing violence on the page. And in some of her other collections, like Read on Reread, I'm just going to read that part. It says, considers the intersection of power, cruelty, and authoritarianism. Authoritarianism. Woo! She's also passionate about the five senses. She has written about the art and science of perfume and Through Smoke, an essay and notes, and about our sense of taste and taste, a book of small bites. She's won various awards, including the Alice Phi D. Castanola Award from Poetry Society of America, the Adrian Rich Award for Poetry from the Beloit Poetry Journal, among many others. She has a lot going on. Okay. Yeah, she has a lot of awards. Yes. She's the daughter of American diplomats, Jehanne Dubrow. I hope I'm saying her name right. Was born in Italy and grew up in Yugoslavia, Zaire, Poland, Belgium, Austria, and the United States. She lives in Denton with her 3 Bellington Terriers, Lola, Bandit, and Ella, with her husband Jeremy, who recently retired from a 20-year career in the U.S. Navy. Jean is a professor of creative writing at the University of North Texas. So that's a little bit about her. I'm assuming if she had children, they would have said it, but it doesn't say. But this book, first off, I'm going to tell you, I like this book. When I read it again, some stuff, you have to go through it in order to understand it. Because she grew up in a time before the Berlin Wall fell. So she's in this, I'm assuming she's not in the, I forgot which one was the free side. Like more Americanish side or Democratic side. I don't think she was on that side. So, and I want to say this is the first book I've ever met the author and had the author write in my book. So there goes the inscription. It says for Raquel, some red words from the bad old days. Warmly, Jehanne Dubrow, ODU 2013. So I had this book a long time. So I decided to write one big poem for the whole book instead of separating them, because I feel like I just wanted to give a whole big analysis of what people, especially Americans who read this, might think. They might be like, oh, this is so terrible, this is so horrible to live in a society where you have rations and you have to deal with wiretaps and you have to deal with censorship. But we're not that much different, but we're going to get to that. So let me read some of the poems that I liked. As you can see, I had a lot going on. Some of these are just separation dividers. So the first section is called Read on Reread, and it only has one poem. So I'm going to just go ahead and read that one. It's called Chernobyl Year. Regimed of glowing children, their throats alive and cancerous, their eyes like lightning in the dark. We were uneasy in our skins. 6th grade, a year for blowing up, for learning that nothing contains the heat which comes from growing, the way our parents seemed at once, both tall as cooling towers and crushed, beneath the pressure of small things, family dinners, the evening news, the dead voice of the dial tone. Even the ground was ticking. The parts that grew poison. Whatever we ate became a stone. Whatever we said was love became plutonium, became a spark of panic in the buried world. So I really like this poem because it's like you can visualize the actual Chernobyl disaster. There have been so many documentaries, there have been so many things, but to live in that area, because I'm assuming I think she was in Poland when this had happened, or she was in Germany. And she talked about being in Poland as well in her biography. She lived a bunch of different places. Um, but being like you're growing up as a teenager in this, you know, this kind of dictatorship government, and what would you feel? And then you hear about Chernobyl, and then you're going through your own things, and then the country is going through their own things. So I feel like that was really interesting. Okay, so the next section is called Cold War. So I think I'm just going to read one poem from each section. I really like this poem. It's called Fancy. It's about her parents, okay? Those evenings when they dressed for an affair, my parents are most beautiful. My father stiff, so sensitive to the strip of silk around his throat that he barely moved except to hold the door for my mother. My mother's neck, a naked thing above her gown. The bow that rustled when she stood like a satin orchard planted near her skin. Her shoes were thin, sharp knives, making a sound I knew as fancy, click, 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 across the black and white foyer. They pinched her toes, she said, which was her way of telling me that loveliness should hurt. Even before she left, her hair loosened from its bun, as though something in her wanted to escape. I rarely heard them coming home after the waltz and gin, ungloved, unfastened from the car, his hand resting on the small secret of her back, her zipper finally split at the teeth. But I imagined them speaking French or Polish at a party, holding the words so long inside of their mouths that the language felt like infidelity, made me look away. Each morning my mother's velvet purse wilted on the chair, empty of its midnight contents, ruby lipstick, a tiny lake of a pocket mirror. My father's tie lay crumpled on the bed, the romance of objects, both their costumes on hangers again, still clasping the scent of two bodies that unbent inside of them. So I thought that was a really nice imagery and like personification of the items. So I really love that poem. So let's see where's the next section. And I feel like this book, it might not have been the greatest time for her in her life, but it's like so interesting because we always think, this reminds me of the war in Ukraine. There's never like wars in European countries. That's what we're, especially Americans, that's what we're supposed to be taught. White people basically are not supposed to be going to war with other white people. That's what it's saying. That's what it's giving. That's what they're trying to say when they're like, oh my gosh, how could this happen in Ukraine? Because they're white people. And they think that other white people are supposed to be so civilized, even though they've conquered the entire world, stolen a bunch of land, killed a bunch of millions of people who are already on that land, including the land that I'm on right now. But yet, when it's Ukraine, it's like, oh my gosh, Russia, this is so uncivilized. And this was like her reality, being, in this kind of government. And now we're just like so shocked when they do this to brown people and black people all the time in other countries. So, but now it's white people. Oh my gosh, it's so horrible. All right, so the third section is the Velvet Revolution. That's just my little 2 cents. So I'll read. It wasn't my favorite poem in this section, but I will read the poem actually called Velvet Revolution. If she said I'm lonely, her words were a curtain over the dark of it, and she barely spoke. Better to hold the peach, not eating it, than feel a pit against her teeth. Apricots, plums, cherries, all fruit reduced to stone, like the mythology of girls who discovered the wound of growing up. When she rubbed the new hair, there was a mutiny called sex, a violence like the riot that she'd seen on the nightly news, this pile-up in nap, this fur, this violet murmuring that knocked away the blood. Knocked awake the blood. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good imagery in this. I feel like it's like basically you're growing up and you're not really sure about all these new things that are happening to you because you only grow up once, so you can't go back and be like tell your old self like, hey, this stuff's gonna happen and it's gonna be okay. You only get one life to experience everything. So I feel like that's what that one's about. Basically, my stickers are falling. There we go. So I can't remember if this section is like the longest or not. I think it might be. Y'all, I ran out of some of these stickers. So I'm trying to see which one I want to read. I kind of want to read this other one. I want to read, this one is like my all-time favorite of the whole book. And it's called Wiretap, Poland, 1987. Two girls with the receivers pressed like shells against their ears, each voiced the other's oceans. And in between the spilling of words, the click, click, click of a machine recording all their treasures, coral lips they wore in school, the boy with azure eyes. Once they misheard the term as water tap, speech a liquid thing to be turned on and off. Somewhere there was a room of secrets, pierced ears, the kisses made with sounds that moved like minnows, silvery and fast. The hush-hush room, the confidence. Somewhere an index card with every name for azure eyes. They called him Sea Glass Boy. They called him Baltic Sea and Jellyfish. They called him Sky is always blue. All those longings, larger than blue eyes, larger even than the body, which takes so long to find its shape, solidify to something heavier than water. And always then the scratch of pen on paper, soft as writing in the sand. So I really love that poem because it kind of like it encapsulates everything that was going on, like the wiretaps, the experience of having a crush, and giving a bunch of different nicknames. I used to do that all the time back when I was young. I'm still young. But basically, you have like code names for the guy you like. Yeah, like you'd be like, oh, if you're talking about that person to somebody else, you call them different names. Like they're calling them Jellyfish, Baltic Sea. It's so that they don't know you talk about them. I feel like that's really cute and like innocent, but it's also like the reality of everything that's going on at the time. Is like, hey, this is their life. They're going through puberty and going through this Cold War and, with dealing with the Berlin Wall. So yeah, so let's get to the last section. It's called Laissez-faire. I really like this first poem because it kind of like encapsulates how you feel sometimes in a store, especially if you go, I don't think anything's 24 hours anymore, but especially if you go to a store like late at night, it just feels weird. So this one's called Bag and Save. Nobody knows if it is night or day inside the Bag and Save. We walk the aisles of 20 kinds of paper towels, the display of Reynolds plastic wrap, the perfect smiles that gleam from every tube of Crest. We're lost. We lost our families near the razor blades. We lost ourselves watching a steak defrost within the deli case, how it turns a shade of dying in the man-made light. Such thirst. We want to shop and eat. We want to stuff ourselves like Ziploc bags about to burst. We want to be a box of Cocoa Puffs or Cap'n Crunch. So this is paradise to be on sale among the merchandise. I feel like that's such like an American thing, is like having all these options and seeing all these things. Yesterday I was in Giant and they still like sell lobsters, like live lobsters, and that was like, they don't do that like everywhere, so it's kind of like weird. You're just looking at these poor lobsters who are gonna, get put into a vat of hot water and boiled alive. And yeah, like you're shopping and you're thinking of this. And I feel like a lot of times, like, we don't really think about what happens to the things that we eat, or what happens to the cow before they get put into the package and cut up, or they get cut up first and then put into the package, or what happens to the pigs before they get killed and put into the packaging. It's just like all these things you don't really think about. And I talk about some stuff in my poem that I wrote for this. And then, but yeah, it's just like so many things that you don't really think about per se. It's like, and then when you're in the store, you're just lost amongst so much stuff. And I feel like it was a different experience for her versus going to the queues and waiting to get your food, to now you can just go in and just, there's everything there. It's just everything. Can you imagine going from like doing that to, all of a sudden everything's there? You just walk in the store and just everything's there. I feel like that would be very jarring. So this poem I inspired the name of my poem that I wrote for the whole book. So basically, it's called Russian Red. It's a lipstick by MAC Cosmetics. When you are writing a book about Russians, the red of winter hands, not to mention beet soup, and certain parts of the body, everything takes on the shade of your poems. Your car is red, the steak you ate for lunch, the wallet you bought at Bloomingdale's. It's just a reiteration of the theme. No surprise, perhaps, that the tube of lipstick was nothing more projectile or ballpoint pen, sits so nicely in your hand. The sales associate shows you how to pencil your lips with nude, a hyper nakedness, like a clean piece of paper. Before swiping the red color across your lips, how red they look, and a bluish undertone of the makeup makes your teeth whiter. You want it to seem French, but your mouth declares its independence. This thing you are writing, it says, is garish and beautiful and bullet shaped. So she talks about red a lot in the book, and I'm assuming communism, that was like a big color, was red. And then you see the lipstick on the front cover. So I feel like that's interesting, that was the color associated with it. So basically, I would recommend the book. It just is a lot of, like, with last week's book, with the black unicorn, there are a lot of metaphors, but I feel like there's a lot of also concrete things that you can like grasp the concept of. But then it's also like, this is a whole different life, and then growing up like this in the 80s in like a different country, a different government system, is really interesting. So now we're going to go to my poem that I wrote. And so that was Russian Red, so I need my poem American Red. You went through a time of war and change. You grew up in queues. You grew up like vines through wiretaps. You watched your parents constrain in their fancy clothes. You left a water-eyed boy without drowning in him. You talked about a life Americans dread. A life of limits and censorship. A life of dictatorship and rations. Greedy Americans would rather jump from bridges than live the life of total government control. But what they don't understand is we already live your life. Want to cry rivers about freedom of speech, but are aghast when there are consequences. Because there are. Can't threaten a dictator and a president. Oh, I can't read my own writing. I need to read it. Can't threaten a dictator or a president without both secret services coming to visit you. We say other governments are so harsh, yet we eat things banned in other countries, use products banned in other countries. We feed the children ads and give sympathy, except when it's ads about our own poor people. Despite government handouts to I meant to say despise, I can't spell, despise government handouts to individuals, but not to billion-dollar corporations. We think we're so individualistic, yet major entities don't care about individuals. We want to believe we are so different when we really are one and the same. So, and then everything's watching you. The camera's watching me. Probably. My FBI agent in the camera. We make jokes about it. But, there's surveillance everywhere. There's videos everywhere. That reminds me, at work, somebody got fired because sometimes what people will do is they'll take stuff, like employees, take stuff off the shelf and they won't pay. They'll eat it and they're like, oh, I'll pay later, which is technically stealing. And I think he forgot to pay, or he didn't get a chance to, or somebody was watching the camera, and it happens. It happened at my old Walmart too. This was a story that someone told me, so I didn't know the person, but somebody had gotten the Arizona tea, the 99-cent thing, and somebody had came and throw their drink out, which I'm like, if it's open, why would you throw it out? I don't know. But basically, that person just grabbed another one, and they saw on the camera that they just grabbed the second one, but all of a sudden they didn't see that she already bought one, or that somebody threw it away. So you're always being watched, no matter what you think, which is it's like a little weird. You think you do something, you think nobody sees. There's probably cameras everywhere. So we always think, oh, we're just so free, we're just so this, we're just so that. But, you can just be minding your business, and all of a sudden, people knocking at your door. Like, hey, where were you on this night? We see you on this camera next to this murderer. We're wondering if y'all together or something crazy. You never know. So, we like to think we're so different, but I don't think we are, really. Can't threaten the president. Unless you're trying to get Secret Service knocking at your door and potentially going to jail. Although there have been people who have tried to assassinate, I forgot the guy's name, but he tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan. But he got out and he's on YouTube. So it's kind of weird. Like, we always talk about other countries, like, oh, they don't have this penalty, they don't have this life sentence, and then people get out and then we're like so horrified by this. But this happens here too. You know what I mean? So it's like, we think we're so different. We think, oh, our government is better, but the government don't care about us, honestly. They rich, they fine. They don't care about the poor people, the lower middle class people, like we think that we do, like we're just so much better than everybody else, and we're really not. And who knows, we could one day have a dictatorship too. So that's my 2 cents about that. So I would highly recommend, 10 out of 10, reading this book. It's really good. It's really interesting, going through her experiences from, her being young, going through puberty, and, like everything happening. So yeah, hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will see y'all next week.